Hi guys. So today we start our fiction unit with John Steinbeck, who wrote Of Mice and Men. That's what we'll be reading of his. And Steinbeck was an American novelist. He was born at the beginning of the 1900s and died in 1968. He was born in Salinas, California, and spent about 6 years in and out of Stanford University before he eventually dropped out, became a manual laborer for a while before he achieved his fame as a writer. He also spent time as a war correspondent during World War II, and most of his writing has to do with social and economic issues. Now, some of his most well-known books, he wrote over 30 books. I think it was about 31 books that he wrote. But some of his most famous titles are Of Mice and Men, Grapes of Wrath in 1939, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize in Literature the year after it was published. It was basically known as a protest novel, and it really brought awareness to the struggles of people during the Great Depression, as well as the exploitation and social struggles of migrant workers. And then East of Eden is another popular title of his from 1952. So as I said, we'll be reading Of Mice and Men. And Of Mice and Men is a Depression era novella. Now a novella it's a genre of literary fiction, but basically it's shorter than a full-length novel, but it's longer than a short story. They usually average about 100 pages, but novellas aren't really known for their page count, but rather their word count. But typically they're around 100 pages or so. Now, Of Mice and Men, according to the American Library Association, has been a regular on the banned book list, and there's various reasons for that. The vulgarity and the foul language in Of Mice and Men, also the treatment of women, and then prejudice, not just the treatment of women, but also those of color or those with disabilities or low socioeconomic status. So there's lots of things in the novel over the decades that have wound it up on the banned book list. So you might be wondering, well then why should we study Of Mice and Men? Well, we still study Of Mice and Men in literature because its themes, even though it was written in 1939, its themes are still relevant today. They're universal themes, they're relatable across many, many cultures, and there's something that everyone can relate to within the pages of Of Mice and Men. So touching on the themes, and there are many, many themes that are in Of Mice and Men, but some of the ones that we'll be focusing on are here. So we have loneliness, femininity, bullying, weakness, friendship, innocence, loyalty, freedom, racism, violence, the American dream. We're going to talk about what that means to you, or what is the American dream, and then compare that to what is in the novel itself. One of the interesting things about John Steinbeck, as I said, he often wrote about social and economic issues, and really was an advocate for the people. But after he received his Nobel Prize in Literature in 1962, he said that his duty as a writer was dredging up to the light our dark and dangerous dreams for the purpose of improvement. So he's really somebody that had an artful craft, and he used it in order to bring awareness to try to better things within our society. Of Mice and Men, it's really a story about two traveling ranchers during the Great Depression. Lenny is the larger fellow, George is the smaller fellow, but what happens is it tells us about their kind of strange and strong relationship that they have with one another. George is constantly having to look out for Lenny. He's a little bit mentally challenged, and because of that, he doesn't always realize the difference between right and wrong, and he often winds up in trouble at the various ranches where they stop to work. And so a lot of times he gets in trouble, and then George has to get the two of them to hightail it out of there before Lenny really gets them in really, really hot water. So it's an interesting relationship to watch evolve over time. One of the things that I want you to be able to do is to understand the time period that the novel was written in. So that would be the time of the Great Depression, the time of the Dust Bowl migration of the Okies to California. These are the things that are addressed in the novel and really make up the setting for the novel. So in order to understand that, I have developed a web quest for you guys to research that time period. And those directions will be on Google Classroom. So if you will go there now, and then you can begin your web quest.